Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I am Deborah Pyron, one of the stage captains here at First Baptist, and we're just delighted that you have joined us for this session. A couple of brief announcements, and then we will get on with the program. Our authors will be signing books at the conclusion of the presentation. That's going to take place in the signing tent that as you exit the sanctuary out the front doors, you will go to the left, but there will be volunteers directing you to the appropriate location. There will be no Q&A for this session. However, there are books for sale. So if you haven't already, visit the booksellers. Brave and Kind is our sponsoring bookseller for this event. So we hope that you will go and make your book selection after the presentation. The Decatur Book Festival is a nonprofit, and we depend on sponsors and contributors such as yourselves to keep bringing these wonderful authors to Decatur each year. We have a couple of easy ways that you can make a donation. When you came in, you should have gotten one of these little bookmarks, and it's got a QR code on the back that if you scan it, it will take you directly to the DBF donation site. Or you can go to the festival website, which is www.decaturbookfestival.com. Now, if you have a phone or any other device that has a ringtone, if you will locate it and make sure it is silenced so we can all enjoy the presentation without any interruptions. Now it is my pleasure to introduce this session and the panelists that will be involved. Moderator for this session is Kelly Quindlen, author of the young adult novels She Drives Me Crazy, Late to the Party, and Her Name in the Sky. Kelly will be in conversation. Go ahead. Kelly will be in conversation with Why We Fly authors Gilly, Segal, and Kim Jones. Gilly Segal spent her college years in Israel. She is currently a lawyer for an advertising agency and lives here in Atlanta. Kim Jones is the former manager of the bookstore Little Shop of Stories. She currently works in the entertainment industry here in Atlanta. So welcome to the stage now.
Okay, well, who's excited about Why We Fly? Thank you everybody for being here for this young adult track. So this book drops Tuesday, October 5th. You do have the opportunity to buy it early today after this session. And it's been 2 years since your last book came out, I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. How do you guys feel?
Nervous.
Right. I mean, it's weird being an author in the pandemic. It's a different way of handling travel and book sales and we're so used to. Gilly and I are best when we get in front of people, and we can't get in front of people.
I know.
Yeah.
Gilly was saying that before you came. She's like, Kim is so good at this stuff. I'm so lucky to write with her.
You said that, babe?
I did. You're not supposed to tell her to her face.
Sorry, I had to spread the love. All right, so let's talk about this book. I loved reading this. I loved it even more than I loved I'm Not Dying With You Tonight, which is saying something. But I really think y'all outdid yourselves here. And we know that this book, it's taking on a very big, important topic about social justice, racial justice, the place of protest, and how that all relates to athletics. But I want to start on the very specific, localized level of the two girls that this story is about. So tell us about Chanel and Eleanor.
Chanel, Nelly, I like to say like the books I'm Not Dying With You Tonight and Why We Fly are like two sides of me. So, everyone's heard the term code switching, and when you think about that, generally what you're thinking about is BIPOC people being in non-BIPOC spaces. But that really wasn't my experience growing up. It was being in two different sides of Black culture. So like I lived in a neighborhood that had some issues, but my mother was heavily rooted in like the more bourgeois Jack and Jill, Divine Nine kind of world. So I switched personalities between two different sides of Black culture was what my code switching kind of entailed. So I like to say that like Alina and I'm Not Dying With You Tonight is one side of that, and now Nelly is the other side of that. She's more the bourgeois side. She's went to Jack and Jill. Her parents are members of the Divine Nine. If you guys don't know what the Divine Nine is, it is the Black sororities and fraternities collectively are called the Divine Nine. And then Jack and Jill is like a uber bougie Saturday morning play date for bourgeois Black kids that they all get together and they try to intermarry bourgeoisness and all of that. But it's an amazing organization that has scholarships and all of this stuff. And so that's kind of more Nelly's lived experience. But what that has made her is a super headstrong girl. And so we like to think this book is just as much about that. It's like, how does the world handle young women who have very strong personalities, who are very clear on who they are, who are unwavering and unapologetic about their strength, and they present that in the world, and the world doesn't always perceive that in a kind way. And not just Nelly as an African-American girl, but both girls, both Chanel and Lenny, are both very headstrong girls. And so, the world ain't always kind to big personality girls.
Yeah, and we see the pressure that puts on them. There's a subplot about Nelly dealing with anxiety, essentially, and smoking as a way to address that. And
she loves the tweed.
She does. And then we also see Nelly is so headstrong and so set on going to the next level, going to college, wanting to win cheerleading nationals. And we also see Nelly put a lot of that pressure on her best friend, Lenny. So tell us about Eleanor.
Yeah, so Lenny starts the book in a pretty low place, right? She's an athlete, she's a cheerleader. She's not a great student, and she's recovering from 2 major concussions and is not sure whether she's going to be able to get back to compete. But she also perceives that her only route to college is going to be through some sort of cheerleading scholarship. She's at odds with her parents over that, who are like not real pleased with the fact that she spends so much time cheering. And she's also, she falls really hard for the quarterback of the football team 3, because we talk a lot about what it means to be a strong person. And I think sometimes we perceive that to be at odds with also being a person who's devoted to a relationship. I don't necessarily believe those two things are true, but Lenny is certainly struggling with that balance and maybe tipping it in the wrong direction. And she's also Jewish. Like the other thing is, so Kim wrote the character that she wanted to write in I'm Not Dying With You Tonight, and she put that girl on the page, anticipating that not everybody was going to be pleased with having that voice on the page. And I am inspired by Kim always, and from everything that she does and says, but also she made me brave enough to want to put a Jewish character on the page who was reflective of my Jewish experience growing up, right? Which was not it's not a Holocaust story, and it's not an Orthodox Jewish story. This is a Reformed Jewish girl who lives this sort of really full life, but her community is an important part of it. So that's Lenny.
And these 2 girls are best friends, and we see them navigate romance with the star quarterback. We see them navigating the personal politics of who's going to be cheer captain. We see all these like intricacies of the high school world. And then at the same time, you guys were balancing that with this larger backdrop of a social justice movement that these girls sort of accidentally end up stumbling into. And then it affects not only each of them as individuals, but also their friendship. So I was struck reading this thinking, how did Kim and Gilly pull off this balance so well, writing about these girls on such an individual level, the things that they're dealing with and their strengths and their fears, And then you have this larger backdrop, which is, of course, an issue very dear to all of us right now. So could you talk a little bit about balancing that?
Yeah, I think we tried to show that they're not balancing that they are doing a terrible job at balancing that, because all of us are always doing it. Listen, none of us are good at this life and thing. Like, we're all just trying to figure it out. Like, there's someone in the world right now who's 90 and is like, this year, I'm gonna get it down. And so, we have these expectations on children that they are supposed to get it when we don't even get it. I'm 45. I have no idea what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. So,
Same.
Right, I'm like, yeah, I'm winging it. So are they. And so they find themselves, involved in social justice kind of haphazardly, thinking that they were going to do something that was going to be, cool for the gram or whatever. And then it turns out that they actually have to be held accountable for their decisions, which is where in life it gets rough. And so all of the YA authors in here, I see a bunch of other YA authors in here, we all, if there was like one thing that really grinds our gears when we all sit at conferences at the bar and talk about it, is this idea that we're supposed to write children in perfection. That we are supposed to write them without flaw. Because what you don't realize is what at 25, 35, 45, 75 years old, because of the mistakes you made when you were 15, 17, and 20. And so you learn from that. So it's your lived experience that allows you as an adult to make better decisions. But you didn't learn that because your parents told you. You thought they didn't know what they were doing. You learned that because you found yourself in some scenario where you learned a lesson and you were like, repetition on this is not something I desire. And so as YA authors, that's what we're writing. We're writing those mistakes. We're writing those learned experience. We're writing those first and those last and those moments. And so these girls have no idea how to navigate all of this. They're just trying to figure it out. And that is why you see Lenny self-medicating. And we wanted to handle that with care as well. That's why you see her self-medicating. That's why you see her struggling with her anxiety, is because she's overwhelmed by how much is happening to her and how much change she's having to experience.
Yeah, I would add to that social justice movements are people-powered, right? Behind every movement for change in this country are real, live human beings.
And usually young people.
Usually young people who are living through these things. So I don't think you can talk about social justice without centering the people who are creating that change and acknowledging the impact that it has on them personally, because it's at the core, right? Without the people who are making this happen, this isn't happening. But it's very easy to look at them as symbols, as icons, to talk about them in a sort of anonymized online forum where it becomes very easy for people's worst impulses to come out and forget that behind that, in this case, are two 17-year-old girls. I mean, they're not even 18 yet, and they're living with the amount of pressure that, I couldn't live with the amount of pressure that they were dealing with. Yeah.
And we see that pressure affecting a 17-year-old boy as well. So 3.
Oh, poor 3.
Poor 3.
I love 3 so much.
3 is the star quarterback, so named because he runs so fast, it's almost like he has 3 feet, which I thought was cute. And I loved him. He really popped off the page. I mean, the moment he showed up, he just really came alive for me. But we see the pressure on him to excel, to get a college scholarship, and his family's playing the long game. They're thinking about this kid getting drafted in a few years and playing professional ball, and his parents are so hard on him. And that's not often something that we get to see in YA books, is these children who have the weight of their family's livelihoods on them, essentially. So where did 3 is really caught between a rock and a hard place in this book, right? He wants to excel on the field. He's also a young black man watching the cheerleaders take a knee as a means of protesting police violence against young black men. And so part of him wants to support that, and then part of him feels like he can't because he just needs to demonstrate his prowess on the field. Just tell us a little bit about 3. How did you guys find that perfect empathy for him? You wrote him so well, and I could tell that there's a lot of affection for his character. So where did that come from?
I loved 3 so much. He was so fun to write.
3. We feel so bad for 3. Boy, we ruined 3's life.
We did. We put a lot of pressure on him. So 3 is the star quarterback, and he has the weight of expectations on him. He's one of these kids that, like, Sports Illustrated is already writing about him as a high school student, and I'm really fascinated by that phenomenon. I am by no means an athlete myself. I run if something's chasing me. But oddly enough, I find myself raising an athlete. In fact, this weekend he's at an ice hockey AAA tournament in Nashville. So I'm sort of like steeped in this world of high pressure, high expectation athletics. And man, is it mind blowing, right? Sometimes to see, the weight of expectations, the type of stuff people do. I'm like, nobody is winning the Stanley Cup this weekend, y'all. Just simmer down with your private training and all this stuff. So part of it was like acknowledging that piece of it, because there are a lot of kids out there for whom that level of pressure and familial expectation is life-altering. And we try not to kitchen sink books, as we call it. Like, you can't write about all the things in the same book. So, like, the piece of this that we didn't get to explore, maybe 3 will get a book of his own someday, Kim, is there's a moment in the book where Lenny and 3 really connect, where they're both like, who am I without this sport? Like, if I fail at this, I am nothing. And I find that like a really powerful and really sad reality that a lot of young athletes live.
My child is also in Nashville sporting it up this weekend. He's a rower, so they have a row meet this weekend. But it's like the biggest thing is also too is like 3 doesn't just have the weight of his parents. It's the athletic department at his school. It's his coach. It's the administrator. It's the booster club. It's all of that. He's the one. They talk about how he's the best athlete this school has had, in 20 years, and that he also has the pressures that he has 2 older brother athletes who've come before him. So now he has the pressure of his last name to boot. And it's just like, that is way too much pressure for a child. That is way too much pressure for any of us. But that is particularly too much pressure for a 17-year-old, but we do it every Friday Night Lights. This is what is happening. And I think that one of the things Gilly and I try to do with all of our books is hope that it's an opportunity to nurture some empathy for people who have a different lived experience than you, that have a different viewpoint than you. It's totally acceptable and okay to make fun of the jock. It's because of the idea that their popularity exceeds their humanity. And so to give that space to him to breathe, to say that people are going to remember him fondly as being the most popular boy in school, as being the one, as having the trophy and the cases, and this kid is dying inside.
Yeah. There was a really powerful moment where Eleanor wants to see 3, and he comes over to her house, and she says, do you want to stay? And he says, no, I have to go for a run because my dad will check my Fitbit when I get back. His parents are monitoring everything he does. And you really did bring a lot of empathy to him. Thank you.
Yeah, he's really great. The other thing is, like, especially when we tour high school and talk to sort of the high school teachers and everything, there is not universal support for what they do. Even the football coach, right, is at the end of the day like, I don't want my players taking a knee. This is a distraction. This football coach has a program that like gets boys to the NFL. That's his trajectory. They talk about 3. They say he's got an 8-figure arm, which is like a wild thing to say about an 18-year-old, but it gets said. We also sort of wanted to honor and reflect that sentiment that we hear about the enormous power and pressure that football programs, that big sports programs wield on college campuses. And the way that 3 is sort of, no matter how he feels about whether or not he wants to support this action that the girls take, he's getting it from all sides, basically.
Yeah, there's a moment where he says to Eleanor, I get what you're saying, I get the point, but the sidelines isn't a place to start a revolution. But y'all wrote a book where it is. And something that surprised me, and I hope this is not too much of a spoiler, but when I first got this book, I was thinking that it would follow a Colin Kaepernick kind of thing where the football players would initiate taking a knee. But y'all wrote it where the cheerleaders initiate it, which I thought was a really powerful thing to do. And of course, this book is a lot about the intersection between athletics and social justice. And you wrote a foreword about that in the beginning of it. I'm curious, how did you decide to approach this through the lens of cheerleading, which is often not treated like a real athletic sport?
I mean, cheerleading is a sport. Have you seen what those girls can do? Good grief. And there are actually more concussion cases from cheerleaders than football players.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that. They brutalize their body for a career that is going to end at college, that doesn't really have a trajectory to go past that. But also just, we were working on this book already and already had the idea. Well, she had that, she comes up with the idea. I just do what she tells me to do.
It's a beautiful marriage.
The people
that
in the
y'all
front
have.
row are laughing because they know me.
They know her. They know. I conceded to her years and years ago. We were already kind of working around this idea, and a lot of people who know me know that I am myself an activist and involved in a lot of social justice work. In 2017, I was at a march with the Georgia Moms, which is an organization of women, a coalition of women who have lost their children to police brutality, and I was at a march with them, and I looked over, I texted Gilly immediately. The girls who were walking beside me at the march were the Kennesaw State cheerleaders who had just lost their scholarships for kneeling. And so I was like a weirdo fangirl. I was like, oh my God, it's the Kennesaw State cheerleaders. Tell me everything about what happened to you. I'm writing this book and blah, 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 blah. And, I really got to spend some time with these exceptionally bright, learned, mature, wise beyond their years young women. And I realized that they had not anticipated it would go as far as it did in terms of them losing their scholarship, which, keep in mind, I met them in 2017 when it's happening. They're still battling that in court right now. But they were prepared. They knew that they would have to suffer consequence. They just didn't know to what degree. Initially, they just no longer allowed them to take the field, and it led to them losing their scholarships. And so Gilly and I were so inspired by them. And Gilly always, she's a master researcher. She went down a rabbit hole and found 10,000 interviews of them and newspaper articles they had been in. She was just flooding my email with have you seen this one? Have you seen this one? Have you seen this one? And with every one, they were so graceful, poised, intelligent, thoughtful in the way that they spoke. And so it sent us down a rabbit hole of athletes and activism, and then we found a cheerleading team of women who were protesting in 1973.
1973, the cheerleaders at Brown University refused to stand for the national anthem.
Yeah.
We act like this is new, but it's not, right? We researched 100 years of athletes and activism dating back to the 1936 Berlin Olympics, when Jewish and black athletes protested together over Hitler's racist policies. I grew up in the 80s. I'm a child of the 80s. And I remember the iconic image of John Carlos and Tommy Smith from the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, raising the beautiful, beautiful photo. And on the podium beside them is a guy named Peter Norman. He's white. He was from Australia. And I remember that photo being held up as a beautiful moment of civil rights empowerment. But when we started researching, what we learned was at the time, they were extraordinarily punished for that action.
Yeah, they ruined them.
They ruined them. Yeah, they were sent home from the Olympics 3 days later in disgrace. Their medals were stripped from them. For many years, neither of the two of them could get work as runners. Peter Norman, who was on the podium and didn't raise his fist but supported their action, went back to Australia. And despite the fact that he broke an Australian record, he was not honored at all. As late as 2000, when Sydney hosted the Olympics, he was not invited to join.
Someone requested that he hold the torch. The torch, and they said no.
And they declined it. So what was really interesting to us was we remember through the rose-colored lens of history, right? We remember from being, when you're on the right side of it, right? You're like, oh, how we all are empowered by this. But at the time, we ruined those athletes. And I mean, I'll just end by saying Colin Kaepernick is still not working in the National Football League.
Yeah. And coincidentally, the pro football player that you invented in this book is named...
Which we did not try that hard to not make him Colin Kaepernick.
Okay.
We're like, what are we going to call him? We're going to call him Cody Knight.
CK. Interesting. But there's this great line that merits a lot of laughs. It does. There's a great line where Nellie says, you know the bizarre part? Everybody is so busy arguing about what he's doing that they're not listening to what he's saying. And I dog-eared the page there because that's the heart of it. That's the heart of it. You said so succinctly exactly what's going on. Everybody's fighting about the action instead of paying attention to what the action is telling us.
Well, that's not an accident, right? Like, that's the distraction. That's the distraction that the power hegemony uses to focus on the act instead of the wrong that they're protesting.
So, this book is set in Atlanta. We are all Atlanta authors. This is the home of, so much civil rights legacies. I mean, Dr. King and now Stacey and, of course, John Lewis. Did you feel that pressure to tell a story in Atlanta? Or was there pressure, I should say, knowing that you were telling a modern-day civil rights story in Atlanta?
I wish we could give you like some snazzy answer, but it's really just like we understand the landscape of Atlanta. So it's like, we know these streets, we'll write about them. Also because we like to connect the books a little bit, even though they're not series, they're more like companion novels. And so, it's like, this is, I'm Not Dying With You Tonight is one side of town, While We Fly is another side of town.
This is the burbs.
Yeah, this is definitely the burbs and While We Fly. This is like Norcross. But I think that you have to still be conscious of the environment in which you're in, and so we are conscious of the environment. The fact that we choose to write these Atlanta tales, and Atlanta does have this legacy of civil rights, of social justice, even still now, and so we have to handle that very carefully because these are still kids that even though they may not desire it, you learn about social justice in Georgia through osmosis. It's just part of the culture. It just kind of is, and so because of that, these kids are not ignorant in a way that maybe someone who doesn't live in such a saturated culture of social justice might be. They're a little bit more conscious because of that, I think.
Yeah. I think if it's not in your bones, can you really call yourself an Atlantan?
Yeah. Atlanta's gonna fight about something, honey. We don't care if it's we don't care if it's the HOA flower mandate. We're like, first of all, the gardenias that you are requiring. Let's just all look at the chart.
But we're not fighting right now because look at those Braves.
Yeah.
Look at those Bravos. Okay, can we talk about my favorite character?
Can we guess who
Yes,
it is?
please guess.
Aunt Ronda.
Yes.
Everybody loves Aunt Ronda.
Has anyone else in here read this book yet?
Sorry for
Okay, one in the back.
For these spoilers.
Aunt Ronda is the best character. She is.
Kelly has decided.
It's not up for debate. This is objective fact.
She's not our favorite character, though.
She's our favorite too.
She's threes.
Oh, no, she's not. I thought it was Bull.
I do like Bull.
Oh, I love Bull,
Your child
too.
made me feel bad about that.
Y'all, I feel like we're having like inside jokes now. It's like not fair. We got
Bull is my favorite character, and then Gilly's daughter, who keeps us both in line, told us, no, that's not an acceptable favorite character, and here's why.
But Aunt Ronda, she's Three's aunt. She's a professor of African American studies at Georgia State. There's like a great scene where Eleanor goes down to visit her in Atlanta and goes to her office hours. Aunt Ronda terrifies me and thrills me at the same time. Like there's a line where Chanel says, the first time she meets Aunt Ronda, she says, I can't believe I've spent this entire party outside with the boys when this queen was hiding in the corner. And that's really how she comes across. Like she leapt off the page. She's an amazing character. So where did the idea for Aunt Ronda come from?
Aunt Ronda is an amalgamation of like many, many women. I know two people who are, I steal Aunt Ronda vibes are sitting in here. I won't embarrass them. It's Gayatri and Audra. One's right there. And then Audra's over there in the skirt. I know Aunt Ronda. Aunt Ronda is the kind of woman that I grew up admiring, in my family and in my household. But I had many Aunt Rondas. I had a teacher who was Aunt Ronda. I had, an older sister who's Aunt Ronda. I have a dear friend who's Aunt Ronda. Gilly's an Aunt Ronda. Vanya's an Aunt Ronda. All of us have these Aunt Ronda. But Gayatri really is Aunt Ronda. But all of us have an Aunt Ronda in our life who is this woman who you don't want to get into a debate with because she's not emotional in the debate. She is ready like she is on the Harvard debate team. And she's like, well, in 1928, when a law called the surgeon versus the monkey passed, what happened was people were transported. Are you familiar with this? It's I'm going to beat you with the facts is how they live through life. And so it's I've always admired those women who float into these spaces and they don't care if racism in this space, they don't care if misogyny is in this space, they don't care what's in this space. What they want you to know is I'm here, I'm a formidable foe, brace yourself.
I love that. I want a t-shirt that says Aunt Ronda, a formidable foe. I really love that. What also was really intentional was, and I'm not dying with you tonight, we gave the girls some less than positive adult figures, right?
All the adults that I'm not down with you tonight were horrible.
Yeah, they kind of fail the girls. And so this time we were very intentionally we need some guides, right? Because a really powerful thing to have in your life as a young person is a trusted adult, whether it's a parental figure or not, but a trusted adult who guides you along your way. So we gave the girls Aunt Ronda and we gave the girls Rabbi Spinrad as sort of these guiding lights to help them figure out listen, you're a mess right now, but there is an other side to this mess that you can get to if you're willing to do the work.
Well, I just have to say I have a huge crush on Aunt Ronda, so good job.
Awesome.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the book. I want to talk about your writing process, especially because usually at DBF we get a lot of writers and aspiring writers.
Do we have aspiring writers in the crowd? Oh, yeah, love it.
We have more than that. Put your hand up if you're a writer in any regard.
Julian, you have 6 books. Put your hand up.
If you don't have his books, Julian Winters, they're amazing.
Please purchase books by Julian Winters. He is one of the most powerful voices of this literary generation. I kid you not. If you do not own a Julian Winters book, you will thank us later. You will be like, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, Julian.
Yeah.
It's your fault. You sat in the front.
You sat in the front row.
Okay, but so this is your second book together. Mm-hmm. How does that writing process work with the two of you? And was it easier this time around?
You tell the truth, I'm never easy. We're in a church.
But I'm Jewish. Does it have the same effect?
It does.
I'm going to need a clergy to weigh in on this. I don't know. It was different this time, right? So with our first book, on the first draft, we swapped chapters back and forth, and we really each primarily took responsibility for one character. And we didn't do that this time for a variety of different reasons. But we sat side by side and wrote the whole thing together, truly side by side. And I think at this point, we've been writing together for 6 years, even though this is only our second book. Books take a long time.
It takes us that long to write a book.
Books take a long time. What we have learned is to lean into our strengths and lean on each other for our weaknesses. So Kim is a master, an absolute brilliant genius master of pacing and dialogue. So, I will hand her pages or I will spout something out and be like, this is what they should say. And she'll be like, that sounds like a 43-year-old woman wrote it in Pride and Prejudice. Let's snap that up. And I don't fight that because I know she's got it. I know she's right. I trust her implicitly on that stuff. And vice versa, I have more of the sort of novel structure and interiority, so she will hand me pages and I will be like, ma'am, this is a script. what do they think? And then she's like, no, the camera will show.
Like, where are they?
So we like that part has remained the core of what we do, which is trusting each other's strengths and leaning on each other for our weaknesses.
I know people always like, we're always on interviews and people are always like, what was your biggest fight? And I was like, man, I wish I had like some salacious tale that I could tell that would be exciting, but we really don't fight. I think we had a disagreement once in 6 years, but that's because, you know, if you're going to write with someone, the first thing you have to do is check your ego at the door. That's step one. And then after that, like, we honor each other. Like she said, we honor each other's strengths and weaknesses. She doesn't expect me to do what I don't do, and I don't expect her to do what she doesn't do, and not only in terms of the writing, but in the business, because we're still in the publishing business. You know what I mean? Like, we have different strengths there that we both, you know, handle and take care of. And so we do not get in our feelings and it's like, well, I'm like, I don't want to do what she does. I have no desire to do what she does. I'm so glad she does the stuff that she does, because she does most of the adulting. And I'm like, what time am I supposed to be there? 1:30? I'll see you at 1:50.
Well, then tell me, not about a fight that y'all have had, but tell me a really fun scene, a really fun time you had writing together on this book.
Was it fun? Is writing fun?
I don't think fun existed, but it's funny because the one thing that comes to my mind is not a why we fly thing. It's a I'm not dying with you tonight thing.
Tell us that.
We, because I'm Not Dying With You Tonight takes place in the midst of a civil unrest, you know, the kids go from the high school and they walk down to the commercial district. We one day parked our cars at a high school that was the high school we were basing everything on, and we walked like several miles down to where the commercial district, where we thought the civil unrest would take place. And so along the way, we made a map. We were like taking notes. We were doing all this stuff. We saw like an older lady watering her yard, and we're like, she's in the book now. And we like wrote down the notes about her house coat and all that stuff, and like where she was gonna be. And we saw some guys hanging out on the corner, and we're like, they're in the book now. That's Marcus and his friends, go. So that was like a really fun day and a really vivid day for us, because, you know, we learned a lot about what that would look like, what that could look like in the midst of a civil unrest in the dark by yourself, 2 young women.
I'll tell you what's fun. It's not a single moment, right? It's a million moments when you connect creatively and you know you're onto something, right? Like that moment where she'll say something, I'll be like, ooh, that's good. Go with that. Talk more, talk more, talk more. And so like that happens to us a lot. And they're certainly hard to, I don't want to like sit up here and be like, writing is easy and it all flows. But you know, those moments when you find the creative sweet spot, when you have a partner and you get to experience that like joyous moment of, I got this together, is really fun.
Yeah, we also don't have a problem writing junk. We have a theory. We always tell people we're not really good writers, but what we are is great editors. Mm-hmm. And so you can't edit a blank page. So you have to just get the words down. So we're both okay with like getting 10 pages of trash on the page, and we're like, we'll come back and fix it. But it's done, and we have something to fix now, so we're still ahead.
So what do you say to writers in the audience who feel that anxiety looking down the blank page, and they know they have to put junk on the page, right? We know we have to do that. Mm-hmm. But do you have any concrete advice for how to force yourself to write that crap?
Get yourself a writing friend who does not let you give up. Mine is in the room right now. Her name is Kate.
Hey, Kate!
Our first book, my dedication is to her. And I sat at, remember Java Monkey? Or do we have Decatorites in here? I'm so sad Java Monkey's gone. We sat in the patio at Java Monkey, and I cried in her lap and was like, I kept quitting. And she did not let me give up. And the sole reason that we're on this stage today together is because of that. So my advice is get yourself a writing friend who doesn't let you give up.
Yeah, that's Vanya. Like, I'll be at my office and I will be like completely stuck and like doing nothing and have watched, the 75th TikTok or whatever I'm doing, I'm not supposed to be doing. And I'll just call Vanya out the blue and be like, what are you doing? And she'll be like, nothing. And I'll be like, come to the office. Her and Alvin both. Alvin's back there too. I'll be like, come to the office. And I just need their bodies in the space so that I'm like, we're working now. Look at us working.
So we all need a Kate, a Vanya, and an Aunt Ronda.
Yep.
Yes, but you can't steal Kate or Vanya. We have dibs.
Yeah, you can't have Vanya or Alvin. They're mine.
The other thing you can do that's sort of maybe more concrete is like remind yourself not to compare your early work to someone else's finished draft, right? Like the book that you see on the shelf has gone through 20, 30, 40 drafts. It's gone through beta readers, professional editors, copy editors, and it is very intimidating to read a book. I mean, I still do this, right? Where I look at it and I'm like, I could never write that well. But I'm comparing my early work, my unedited work, to someone's final finished product. So when you find yourself having that moment, like, stop yourself.
Yeah.
All right, so here's my last question for you two. I'm not dying with you tonight. It's two girls who are not friends. They become friends as they go through this kind of, for lack of a better word, adventure, right? Traversing through the city. And then in Why We Fly, you chose to write about girls who have been best friends since they were kids. And they have a lot of cute moments like that, like Nellie refers to Lenny as Bunny, and just like some cute background. Do you draw on your own friendship and your interpersonal dynamic when you're writing these girls' relationships?
I think we do, not in the sense that we write ourselves onto the page, but I mean, certainly we are also writing, you know, cross-cultural interracial friendships, right? So I think it seeps in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because we write each other. Like I will write characters that are way more like her than they are like me. Like my lived experience is in there, but they're like, Nellie's personality is not my personality. That's her personality. My sister is here. She will tell y'all that I was not ambitious. I was like, where's the next party? I got an ambition for that.
Meanwhile, I was like, Nellie, I was like, life begins in college. What is this high school nonsense?
Yeah, I was like, high school rules. And she was like, get me out of here. So, you know, we kind of almost like low-key write each other. And it helps us with editing because even though I'm writing, you know, Nellie from, you know, a lived Black experience, that amount of like pressure that she's under to perform, I didn't experience that. So I'll turn to Gilly and be like, what was your college application process like? Like, what did that look like for you? How did that
Spreadsheets.
feel? Yeah. And I'm...
Which Nellie has in the book.
Yeah, she does spreadsheets. I'm the one that's boy crazy, even now. So Gilly will be like, you would do this for a 3-type boy, would you? And I'll be like, I would.
She's like, I would go harder.
Yeah.
The other thing is, the core of our friendship is the way that we connected, even though like on the surface we may not seem to have a lot in common, right? But we met at a writing retreat and kind of fell in love with each other through these connections that we have and share. And that's the core of our friendship. And I think we try to bring that into the books in some capacity. Like what made these two girls fall in love with each other?
Yeah.
Well, you did that very successfully. You're also making me think that I've been going about this wrong, writing on my own, and I need to get a co-writer. So I'm about to go hit up Julian after this. Yeah, all right. So look for that book by Julian Winters and Kelly Quindlen in 3 years.
Kelly's books are also for sale in the tent, and you should also get them.
Yes, you guys should also get Kelly's books.
They are amazing.
Well. Yes, she is amazing.
Well, thank you.
And she has great shoe wear, so there's that.
Thank you. I had to channel my, my LGBTQ rainbowness. Speaking of, I really thought that Chanel might end up with Marisol, and I'm angry that she did not. So, Kim Jones.
No comment.
Sounds like I owe Kim a drink and I need to go have a come to Jesus meeting with Gilly. Because I was feeling Marisol and there was a connection between Marisol and Chanel and yeah, so sequel?
I wouldn't like her.
I see that. Yes. I know.
Okay,
Gilly, you are not an ally.
But I'm wearing my ally shoes.
shoes. You are. We'll give you a pass for that. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We will have our books on sale from Brave and Kind, which is a wonderful local children's bookstore, in the signing tent. So come see us. And I'm guessing the two of you might change your shoes. I know Gilly's going to.
No, this is what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you out there.